Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Date Forever. You probably heard us talk about the 5 love languages, but in this week's episode, we're going to be chatting about the 5 apology languages. We're also going to be chatting about how to apologize in a way that your partner will connect with and ultimately strengthen your relationship, that nobody is perfect and all humans will make mistakes from time to time, and the act of radical forgiveness. But before we get into that, what's been fueling you up this week, Sammy?
No, Nathan, what's been fueling you up? I always go first.
Yeah, you do.
What's been fueling you up?
Well, yesterday was the launch of our program, Couple and Team.
Yes, it's out in the world.
It is. It's very exciting. It's been a very long time coming, and we're super proud of what we've built, what we've put together, all of the lessons in there, and yeah, we're just super pumped that it's now out in the world for everyone to be able to join.
All right, Nath, what is Couple and Team?
So Couple and Team is an online course, which is basically built up of all of the lessons that we've learned over our, 14 years of being together, and also like a hope of lessons from experts that we've learnt along the way.
And who is it for?
It's aimed at kind of early stage relationships, but we've had people go through the course who have been in relationships or have been even married for like 8+ years and have got so much out of the course. So really anybody who's in a relationship, I think.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What does the course involve?
So the course is 12 main modules. So they go from everything from like communication through to having fun and leadership and a whole heap of pretty fundamental relationship skills. So it's made up of a whole heap of small little video lessons, little bite-sized lessons, plus a bunch of activities to do along the way to really help yourself and your partner to understand each other a lot deeper, have some conversations that you didn't know you even needed to have to really build and strengthen your relationship.
All right, and how much does it cost?
So the cost is $497 as a one-off payment, but that will get you access for a full 12 months, and so you can do the course as many times as you want throughout that time. What we've basically designed is for it to be done within 12 weeks, so you should have plenty of time to be able to review any lessons that you want to retouch on or do the course 2 or 3 times to be able to really get the most out of it and implement everything you want to.
So you could speed through it at one a week, one module a week.
Yeah.
Or you could snail pace it at one module a month.
Yeah, absolutely. So a question for you, Sammy. What are some of the indicators that people might want to join Couple and Team or think they might be able to get something out of it?
So we believe better relationships equal a better world.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So I think anyone can have a better relationship. I don't think, even if you've got like a 10 out of 10 amazing relationship, I still think it can get better.
I don't think there's really an end state, is there, to better or to a better relationship?
So maybe you've had some troubles communicating with one another or setting goals for the future, or you've been fighting about some big and little things, or maybe just like struggling to run your household together, like that team and project management kind of things.
Yep.
Or the complexity of like having your own life as well as your partner's life while staying on the same page about like what you want to achieve, and amongst all of that, keeping your romantic spark alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that is so important to, just make sure that we're continually adding fuel to keep that romantic spark alive.
Yeah, so the course is definitely intended to take you from like a good place to a great place or to an amazing place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really about designing a relationship and a life for the long term together.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Yeah. So if that takes your fancy and you feel like maybe your relationship could do with a little extra fuel, pun totally intended, go and check it out, fuelcollective.com.au/courses. And the doors are open right now through till the 2nd of November, and then they'll close and they won't be open again for a few months. So this is your window. This is your chance if you want to take some time over the summer to invest in yourself and your relationship. jump in. We're biased, but it's so worth it.
It really is.
So thank you for persevering through that self-plug. We appreciate you, and we are here to serve, and we want to make sure that you can take something away from every episode that you listen to. So let's get into it.
Today we've got Beck Thompson joining us. Beck Thompson is a #1 international best-selling author, 2020 AusMumpreneur Award Winner, dating and relationship coach, and the owner and founder of the Relationship Circle, a no BS relationship coaching service that digs deep, gets to the truth, and supports you in creating new behaviours and patterns that re-energise and revitalise your life and relationships. Welcome to the show, Beck.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. We're stoked. So tell us a little bit about how you got interested in this space. How did you become a relationship coach?
Yeah, my career, I suppose, that I trained at uni for was social work, and I worked a lot in the domestic and family violence and homelessness space and did a lot of trauma therapy and family therapy, and it was really heavy. So then whilst I was in there, moved into management and moved out of that phase into coaching. And I suppose I started off doing life coaching, and I realised that was way too broad. And the clients that I loved working with the most were those that were in relationships, because I love people dynamics together, and I love couples together, and just seeing people have those aha moments together is amazing.
Wow, that you must have seen and heard some really heavy stories in the beginning then.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah. So when did you make the pivot? How long have you been in this relationship and coaching space?
I've had this business for 2.5 years.
Awesome.
Coaching for probably 10 years. Yeah, alongside work. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And we mentioned that you've got a #1 best-selling author book. What's the book that you wrote?
It's called The Conscious You. So I collaborated with 5 other amazing women, and it's all about how to consciously create your most amazing life. And my section's just all on relationships, but not just intimate relationships. It's on all types of relationships, because they can be all the same, really.
Yeah. There's lots of skills that overlap, whether or not they're romantic or otherwise. Hey, so we wanted to kind of dig into a conversation, kind of a couple things about what taking accountability looks like in a relationship, and then how we can go about apologising if maybe we've failed to take accountability somewhere. So I'd love to know, what do you believe is accountability, and what does that look like in context of a romantic relationship?
Yeah, I think it's massive. And I don't know if it's because that's my main apology language, is that I need people to take responsibility. But I really think that's what accountability is taking responsibility for the part that you've played in whatever it was that happened, like good or bad. And I think that that's really, really vital for a relationship.
Yeah. And there's so many parts to it, right? Like whether or not it's like running your house together, there's so many things that one of you's got to take responsibility for.
Yeah. And I think setting up that framework in the beginning to, first of all, to teach yourself how to take accountability for what you've done, and for your partner to do that as well, even just with small things, it makes a difference.
Or what you've not done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it can be very much a proactive thing or a reactive thing. It's either that you can kind of go into something and be like, all right, these are going to be our jobs, or this is what I'm going to be accountable for. And then it kind of sets you up for success or failure, I guess. But then also there's probably a reflective thing where you can go, like, reflect back later on and go, oh, I should have been accountable for that. I didn't take accountability, and that's why we're in the position we're in.
Yep, absolutely.
So what do some of those conversations look like? Or do you have any recommendations for how to set up some of those conversations and agreements?
Yeah, it's quite interesting when you just mentioned then, Nathan, the jobs, because my husband and I, when we first moved in together, decided that we would give each other tasks of what we've done. And we've only just recently revisited that because it wasn't working. So one of his jobs was that he needed to do the washing up, and I was doing the washing. And it worked for ages, like that we had this agreement that we would do certain jobs, because it would stop us, either of us, kind of asking the other one, which I think we both resent a little bit.
Yeah.
And kind of push back against. So it really worked until it didn't. So I think it was important to, like, if you start those conversations, to also revisit those conversations along the way. But I think it's as simple as discussing what your both needs and wants are in a relationship, and to see and to not make those assumptions about what the other person's going to do, and to just be really honest about what you need. And if that's to do with keeping the house tidy, or it's to do with that you need to sit down and communicate once a week, like, they're the same sort of thing and the same sort of conversation that you can have with each other.
Mm. I kind of draw this parallel between romantic relationships and business because that's just my jam. But you had a job and you were employed and you went to work and you had no idea what it was that you were meant to do. And you had no idea what the person who sat next to you, what their role was or what their contribution to the success of the business was. Then there'd be so much double handling, a lot of confusion, and it would be very hard to feel like you were succeeding or whether or not you were knowing you were doing a good job or not. And I really like what you just said there about like creating the space where you don't need to be asking each other to do stuff all the time because that's exhausting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sets up that, like, it kind of makes the scales not even, right? Because then at some point someone's in charge and someone's telling someone what to do. So then you're not equal.
How do we avoid that?
Yeah, like, good question, because sometimes you do need to ask someone to do something. And I think it's in the way that you ask. So, like, my husband really resents it and I fall into this pattern a lot. But I go, hey, can you go do that, like, now? Like, and he's in the middle of doing something and he's like, no. And I don't want to be told what to do. He's like a 12-year-old sometimes with that. And so I think I know for him, I have to set up the time where I do it. Like, if I need something done from him, ask him, but he has a little bit more time to do it because he works slower than I do, whereas I'm really quick and I get stuff done. He takes a bit longer with things.
We have that in common. I have super high activation energy, like, let's do it now, go, do it, make a decision, go. And Nath is far slower, needs to process a little bit more, needs to consider the decision. But what he has is follow through. He will actually complete the thing. Me, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
Definitely start.
Yeah.
Maybe not finish.
You'll get me activated and then I'll follow through and finish things off.
Yeah, that happens a lot. That happens a lot.
We did a personal development course, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 years ago together, and he taught us about this thing called HOTS, and that was hares, owls, tortoises and squirrels, and it's mainly for teams in terms of workplaces, but it's so relevant for relationships because it's people. So I'm a hare, which is probably what you are, Sammy, which is like go, 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 and you'll jump off the cliff without even looking at what you're doing. And my husband's a tortoise where he's like really slow with things. He's considered, he takes his time. But you're right. Remember the tortoise will finish at the end of that race, like no matter how slow he's going. Yeah, so it's really, really interesting to think about it.
Oh, so can you recall what the other two was? The owl and the squirrel? Tell us about the owl and the squirrel.
The owl's also a really slow thinker, but they're really wise. So they only usually speak when they have something really important to say. So they're people that don't really talk a lot in social situations, but if you ask them, they'll come out with this answer that you're like, whoa, that was really wise. And the squirrel is a fast thinker, but they often people with anxiety in their head. So they just think a lot and everything's like kind of worrying thinking, if that makes sense.
Dashing around.
Yeah.
A little bit erratic.
And in circles, like I'm not really getting anywhere, just thinking.
Hey, that's really interesting to kind of think about and how you work as a team if you've got hopefully there's 2 different kinds, because I'm sure if you have 2 of the same, it's probably gets really messy.
I think so.
But yeah.
Or you get nothing done.
Yeah, but learning to appreciate and respect that this person that you fell in love with or stepped into love with is different than you. And that's probably why you were attracted to them or has a part to do with it. And then, yeah, that they're going to do things different than you.
Yes. Which is like, this is the one thing I try to get couples to look at all the time because that can be such a beautiful learning. Like if you can look at the world through your partner's eyes and see how they see things, you don't have to be right all the time. Like they could show you a way that could blow your mind of how to do things and you never thought about it before. But if you're so stuck in your way of doing things, you never get anywhere.
Yeah. And as you mentioned too, like this concept was kind of used predominantly for like bigger teams and things like that. So it's obviously there to be able to leverage everyone's strengths and kind of fill in some of those gaps of weaknesses. So if you can work that out within your tiny team of 2 as well and where your strengths and weaknesses are and how Sammy can activate me to do things.
Exactly.
Or activate tasks so that we can actually get stuff done, then I think that's a really good learning to be able to, kind of do a bit of personal reflection and understand how you can support each other best.
Yeah, agreed.
And knowing when they work together, like a story comes to mind. We were at IKEA and our favourite part of going to IKEA is the as is section at the end because we're both bargain hunters.
Not the meatballs?
Oh, the part between the end of shopping and the meatballs, the as is section. That's a sweet spot. But yeah, so we're in the as is section. And if for anyone who doesn't know, it's kind of like items that have been returned or they were display or there's something very minor wrong with it. It's got a scratch somewhere. Anyway, so we were in there and my activator is like, oh my God, look at this amazing piece. Like we have to get it now. Whereas Nathan's like, maybe we should go home and measure the space and make sure it's going to fit. And I'm like, yeah, but if we don't do it now, we could go home and spend all that time and we would measure and we might come back and it might be gone because there's not another one. The bargain would be gone. So we have these like kind of things that happen in day-to-day life where we have to navigate the risk and reward of each other's behavior because we very well could have bought the thing and it not fit.
And that has happened before too, that we've brought things. We've got a cabinet over in the corner here that was meant for our bathroom that doesn't fit in our bathroom.
Yep.
But we made it work.
The exactly same dynamic as you. It's hilarious. I bought a fridge that didn't fit height-wise, so we had to cut the cabinet off to make it fit.
Yeah, but then in saying that, like we got it home and it was exciting and Nath followed the project through. Nath attached the thing to the thing and I love it, but you definitely did the executing. Hey, so this is super interesting talking about the way that we work together and taking accountability and responsibility for the roles that we play and the contribution that we bring to the team. But sometimes we are going to fuck up because we are humans. So I would love to know, what do we do when an agreement or an expectation has been broken or has been let down?
Yeah, I think a few things. It's like you said, we're human. So I think it's really important to remember that sometimes we expect our partners and other people around us to be perfect when we're not. So understanding that they're human or understanding that we're human, whoever's made the error. And I think in my mind, the repair of those situations is always more important than what's actually happened. So again, that just taking responsibility for what's happened. My husband could do anything in the world, well, maybe. And if he said, I'm sorry, that's completely my fault, I'd be like, okay, cool. And also, I suppose, if it was a recurring thing, to change the behaviour to make himself better or to be a better human. So I think those are the two things. But if it's yourself and you've done it, then I think radical forgiveness is important because you're human and you're going to fuck up and you're going to do it more than once and that's okay.
Yeah. So you did touch on this earlier, but there are these 5 apology languages that are kind of the flip side to the 5 love languages. So can you just give us a little rundown of what these 5 apology languages are?
Yeah. I've written them down because I always forget what they are. I always forget one love language. I've cited them all. The one poor person. So there's expressing regret, and that's saying that you acknowledge the hurt that you've caused and you can take ownership of that in I'm sorry for what it's a real simple I'm sorry for saying that. But you've got to be really careful with the sorry, right? Because people throw sorries around like they're candy sometimes. So it has to be a genuine sorry and not a sorry after you've been caught doing something or I'm so sorry. You know what I mean? The tone in how you say sorry is important as well. There's accepting responsibility, which is my one. I want people to take ownership and responsibility for what they've done. I don't want to hear excuses about what's been done. I just want you to take complete ownership of what's happened, not put the blame on me, just take ownership for what you've done, which, funny enough, in turn will usually make me take ownership for what I've done, if that makes sense.
Acknowledge your part in,
exactly.
The part you've had to play in the situation as well.
Yeah, exactly. Making restitution. So that's about finding a way to kind of correct a situation. So if something's been done that you wish hadn't been done, then they take actions to make it different. Does that make sense? So to make things kind of right again. And genuine repenting, which is that you want someone to not only say they're sorry, but to take action to change in whatever they've done and to really, I suppose your way of knowing that they're sorry is that they would be doing things different to what they've done. And then there's requesting forgiveness. So saying to the person, I'm so sorry, will you forgive me? Sort of thing. Does that make sense, all of them?
It does. So what role do these 5 different languages play in a relationship?
I think like the love languages, it's just another way of understanding the way that your partner works. I think with any of these things, it's just getting a deeper understanding of what will work. And I like the 5 love languages in this because it feels like a shortcut. You don't have to guess Like if you kind of understand someone a bit more, you can kind of go straight to what works for them. And then you don't have to try all these other things that fail, and then get it right.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes, and I don't know who originally said it, but the first time I heard it, it was said by a guy named Dan Bolton. And it's, if you don't have a framework, it's guesswork. And I was like, that's so true, because you're just making it up otherwise. So yeah. So like the 5 love languages, is the 5 apology languages the same in that we have a preferred one that we like to receive and a preferred one that we like to give in? Or are they generally the same?
No, I don't think they're the same. I think you're right. And also, like I like to say with everyone with these, there's on a spectrum. So you might have a combination of them. You might not always be one at all the time. Does that make sense? So there might be a top one for you, but there's other ones under there that would work as well.
Yeah, so Sammy and I both did this. So there is a quiz that you can go do. So it is on the 5 Love Languages website, but we'll pop the link into the show notes so that everybody can go and actually take the quiz themselves. So Sammy and I went and did this a couple of days ago because we hadn't actually heard of this concept before. So it was pretty interesting to kind of see our results and what came out.
Yeah, we've got very similar. So my top one was make restitution. So Nath needs to acknowledge the thing, but then also be like, how can I make it up to you? And then actually follow through on the how can I make it up to you?
Yeah. Yeah. And my top one was expressing regret.
Okay.
Yeah. So genuinely saying sorry and being like, yeah, I'm sorry for what I did. Yeah.
And have you noticed it? Does that make sense to you guys now that you've done it?
Well, it did, but it also highlighted that we both got a 0 for requesting forgiveness. So neither of us tolerate, hey, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? That's not good enough for either of us.
And I think for that one, when I got that answer or that result, I was like, it feels like it's very much on the person who's done the wrong thing and wanting to heal themselves, not to heal the other person. And that's kind of the way that came across for me. But I don't know if that's the way it's intended, but that's...
For someone else, that might be really important.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah.
So what are the impacts of not using these languages or not using your partner's preferred language, and you're going about apologising and trying to make amends, but you're maybe not doing it in their preferred language?
I think you just might miss the mark. And again, I think you make these assumptions. It's little bit like the love languages, not that I want to go into them, but if you're offering an apology and it's not hitting the mark with the person, but you think it should be, so then you're might get angry that the person's not receiving your apology or accepting your apology. You're like, well, I've said sorry. Why aren't you accepting it? But they're not. It's not how they hear it. It's not how they feel in their body. So I think it's just an opportunity to miss the mark there when you don't need to, because there's such a simple tool out there to help you.
Yeah, I've definitely both heard and experienced that. I've said sorry, what more do they want? Oh, okay, well, they probably want one of these 5 things.
Yeah.
Hey, so some people are not overly comfortable with this, taking ownership, taking responsibility, then actually expressing an apology of sorts. How can we practice that, or how can we get better at mastering that skill?
Yeah, that's just your ego getting in the way. That's okay, because we're human. We can practice it, one, by mirroring it for our partner. So I know that my husband will do it if I do it, and vice versa. And we do that with a lot of our relationship. If I want him to do something, I'll do it myself and he'll end up doing it. So if you want your partner to do it, then you practice doing it. But if it's you that's uncomfortable doing it, just like I said at the beginning, try with small things I'm sorry I left that chopping board out. I didn't, I should have put it straight in the dishwasher. I know we've spoken about that, really tiny things, because this is what erodes relationship, is those tiny repeated patterns over and over and over again. I've asked you to do it and you don't do it differently and nothing's changing. So if you can get better at what the other person expects and what you need or want, and then you can take apology for those tiny things, I think that helps.
Yeah, and maybe taking the quiz and figuring out what your partner needs. Because I probably didn't know that for Nath, expressing regret, that was a key part of something that he would need to hear, is my true remorse. I mean, I think I would think that was implied, but maybe I can now probably be a bit more conscious about including that element in an apology.
Yeah.
So with that framework in mind, what does a really great apology kind of look like or sound like?
I think that, and I don't know if it's because my lens is looking through taking responsibility, but I love when I encourage clients to use I statements. So if you don't know what this is or you forget, just Google it because there's examples everywhere. But it's a way of saying like, I take responsibility for what I'm feeling and I'm not putting it on you. And the difference between like using that, which would be like, I feel because when this happens, I need or want from you. It's kind of that framework. Instead of saying, when you did that, I felt this, blah, blah, blah. It kind of gets the other person's
defenses
up immediately. So if you can take responsibility for your part and work on that I think that supports it.
Yeah.
And then how do we go about actually forgiving ourselves if we're fucked up?
Yeah, so important. It is, because I think we carry around, like, I'm going to say particularly women, and I don't know if that's because I work with a lot of women, but we carry around a lot of guilt about things. And when you become a mum, then becomes mum guilt, and there's just this whole, and it's useless. It doesn't help anyone. So just like radical forgiveness around what's going on and reminding yourself that you're human and it's okay to make mistakes because that's how we grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
A little while ago, I got really curious about forgiveness and like, what is it? And like, forgive, forget, don't, forgive, but don't forget, forget, like just that I went down a rabbit hole, right? I'm like, what even is this thing? We talk about it and like that it sets sets each other free. And I watched this documentary about a woman who went through the process of actively forgiving a drunk driver who had killed her child. And she kind of summed it up the most articulate I'd ever heard. And that it was, forgiveness is when you can get to a place where you no longer require anything of the person. Like I no longer need them to make repent. I no longer need them to continue to verbally apologize. I no longer need anything from that person. And that tether between us, it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
It kind of gets rid of that emotional attachment or the trigger to it as well.
I guess it's made more complicated when the relationship and the tether is with yourself, and that you've got to forgive yourself and not expect anything more of yourself from that situation. Like, it's kind of, you can put it back in a complete circle. There's no dotted lines around the situation or the incident or the experience or the moment or whatever it is. Not expect yourself to have gone back into the past and know to do something different.
Totally. And you only know what you know, right? So you can't think about a situation with what you know now for back then because you didn't have that knowledge then. So you just I get roasted for believing this, but I have an honest belief that everyone is doing the best they can in any given moment. And any given moment that might look different to what it looked like 5 minutes ago or a minute ago or 10 days ago, because there's different things happening for us and we're all just on this journey ourselves. So, but I really do believe that.
I'm with you, Beck. And life is nicer to live when you believe that people are doing the best they can.
Yeah, exactly. But remember, that has to go for yourself too. So you have to believe that you're doing the best you can at any given moment.
Yeah.
And I guess the forgiveness piece then probably comes back to actually you learning something from that experience and improving that model of yourself too, and that you have improved yourself out of this situation.
So how do we accept the apologies? Like how do we actually, that bit in between of getting to forgiveness, but, really accepting. And like, I think you said it right at the beginning that the repair part is actually the most important part. Like you go through the incident and then the conversation and the apology, but then the repair. So how do we just go, okay, all right, I've heard them. They've acknowledged the situation. They've hopefully apologized in my preferred apology language. What does that next stage look like?
I think for everyone, the timing's different. So it depends on sometimes how much time you need to cool down to get your head back in the game, to be able to really hear that person and to acknowledge what they've said. Because I invite couples when they start conflict, if they're in the middle of a heated time, to separate if they can't get through it productively, and to come back when they've got the space to be able to process what's happening. But if they come back too soon within that, they're going to be still in their own head about why they need to win the argument and why they need to be right. So I think the same is with the apology. If you get that apology too soon, I think you're going to be in your own head about, he doesn't really mean it. That's not really what's happening. That's not how it happened. Like, this is, so I think time takes it, but also just letting go of your ego again and the need to be right. And really, if you love this person and if you're in a relationship with them, you've got some respect and love for them. And we forget that the argument shouldn't be you two against each other. It should be you two against the problem. So if you're looking at it from that frame and you think, well, they're taking responsibility or they're doing what they need to do to apologise, I accept it and we can move on and then go forward from there. I think that would help.
Yeah, I think that's good advice.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that framing of the two of us against the problem as opposed to us or me against you.
Because that's what most people argue about, right?
Yeah, it is.
Who's going to win? Who's going to be right? Well, whose voice is louder? And who's just going to keep arguing till I drown the other person out and they won't say anything anymore? And then I've done damage that
I've heard that quote somewhere, like, do I want to be right or do I want to be in love?
Yeah. I always say, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
Yeah.
It's something that always stops people and they go, oh, I want to be happy. I'm like, well, stop it. Like, what are you doing trying to win constantly?
That power struggle trap to fall into in a relationship. Hey, so Beck, you mentioned your husband and your own relationship, but I would love to know, have you got any practices or habits that you've got in your own relationship that you do to keep it fueled up?
We love to have fun together. And I think that that's a huge piece that I think it was when I was around 20. I'm 38 now, 37.
Oh, you're aging up.
But when I was around 20, when we've been together for a long time, for that whole time, and we thought that I became an adult. And so I got really serious with life. And he's always been a huge joker. And so I don't know, over time learnt to allow that joke and fun and play in, and it's changed the way that we do our relationship. So I just make sure that we laugh every day, that we have fun every day, that we don't take things too seriously, and that we communicate. But we always, fun and play is huge for us.
What does that look like for you? Like, how do you?
So many different things. Like, it could be like joking around with each other. We're quite touchy-feely. So it could be like a tickle, or it could be like a slap on the bum, or it could be like saying a practical joke. We also don't take each other too seriously. So if he makes fun of me or I make fun of him, or we make fun of each other or ourselves, that's allowed. Or we make fun of our little boy who's 19 months. He becomes the butt of our jokes. Or we watch something funny on TV. Like, it's such a broad spectrum. Or when we're allowed to go out in the world again, we do fun activities, So, a very broad spectrum of things.
Yeah, I like that. So this has been a really great chat. And what I would love to know, is there something that you would recommend for couples to watch, read, listen, do, or practice to implement into their relationship to help them keep fueled up?
Yeah, I was thinking about this a lot, and I think that because we've been talking about apologies, there's a really great woman called Harriet Lerner, and she's got a book called Why Won't You Apologise, I think it's called. She's got another one called The Dance of Anger, which is fantastic, and she writes really well, but she's just such a great way of learning. And also Esther Perel is fantastic.
We love Esther.
So,
I love Esther.
Anything of hers is just amazing. And she's also got such a knack of explaining it in such a simple way that you don't need to be a clinician to understand.
And of course, go and take the 5 apologies quiz. That's a good one to go and do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a really beautiful chat. And we've talked about, taking accountability and responsibility for yourself and apologising and owning your part in the relationship. But we also want to talk about being the change that we want to see in the world. So to say thank you for joining us, we've provided a student in Indonesia with a week of classroom education. This is particularly prominent for girls. So this project is looked after by Friends of National Parks Foundation in Borneo. Yeah, so it has a huge ripple effect because often girls don't get to go to school. So thank you so much for making that possible.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
No worries. So, Beck, if people want to connect with you or learn a little bit more about what you do or get your book or something like that, how should they do that?
Yeah, so the book's on Amazon. I wish I had copies, but it hasn't made it. I have to also order from Amazon and it hasn't made it here yet. And they can find me on Instagram, on Facebook, my website. Everything is under the Relationship Circle. So if you just search for that, you should find me. And very happy for you to contact me if you've got anything that's come up from this or anything that's come up in your relationship, and we can chat through it.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, cool.
And do you do sessions over Zoom?
Yes, everything is over Zoom.
Zoom.
Yeah. Everyone's over Zoom, but I love it.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Beck.
Thank you.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.